Dean Martin walked off the Rio Bravo set in the middle of filming, leaving John Wayne furious. But what the Duke did next shocked the entire Hollywood crew. It was April 15, 1959, on the Warner Brothers soundstage in Burbank, California. The desert town of Rio Bravo was being built inside Stage 7, complete with a dusty main street, a saloon and a jail that would become iconic in Western film history. But on this particular morning, the biggest stars on the set weren't getting along, and their conflict was about to explode in a way that would change both of their careers forever. Dean Martin had been reluctant to take the role of Dude, the alcoholic gunfighter trying to redeem himself in Howard Hawks' new Western. Dean was at the peak of his success with the Rat Pack, headlining Vegas shows and making romantic comedies that required little more than his natural charm and that famous crooked smile. A serious dramatic role in a Western was outside his comfort zone. But Hawks had convinced him that Dude's story of a man battling his demons would be perfect for Dean's particular brand of vulnerability beneath the cool exterior. John Wayne, on the other hand, was in his element. The Duke had been making Westerns for over 20 years by 1959, and he approached every film with the intensity and professionalism of a man who understood that his reputation was built on being reliable, punctual, and completely prepared for every scene. Wayne arrived on set at 6 a.m. every morning, knew every line in the script by heart, and expected everyone else to match his level of commitment. The trouble began in the first week of filming. Dean Martin's approach to acting was completely different from Wayne's methodical preparation. Dean rarely memorized his lines word for word, preferring to understand the emotional truth of a scene and then improvise dialogue that felt natural to him. He'd made a career out of making everything look effortless, whether he was singing, acting, or performing comedy. That casual approach had worked perfectly in nightclubs and romantic comedies, but it was driving John Wayne absolutely crazy. Places everyone. Howard Hawks called out for the 10th take of a crucial scene in the jail where Wayne's Sheriff John T. Chance tries to convince Dean's Dude to stay sober long enough to help him face the bad guys. It was a pivotal moment in the film, requiring both actors to show vulnerability beneath their tough exteriors. Wayne delivered his lines with the precision of a veteran actor who had prepared thoroughly. But when it came time for Dean's response, he paused, looked around the set, and then delivered a version of his lines that was close to what was written, but not exactly what was in the script. "Cut!" Hawks yelled, his patience beginning to wear thin. This was the third day they'd been working on variations of the same scene, and they were falling behind schedule. Wayne walked over to Dean, his jaw set in that familiar, determined expression that had made him famous in dozens of Westerns. "Dean, we need to stick to the script. I've got my lines memorized. The crew has their cues memorized, and when you change things up, it throws everyone off." Dean adjusted his cowboy hat and gave Wayne that trademark shrug that had charmed audiences for years. "Duke, I'm giving you the same emotion, the same meaning. Does it really matter if I say I reckon I can help you, versus I suppose I could lend a hand? The feeling's the same." "It matters," Wayne replied firmly, "because that's not how professional actors work. You learn your lines, you hit your marks, you do your job. That's what separates the stars from the amateurs." The implicit criticism in Wayne's words hit Dean harder than the Duke might have intended. Dean Martin was many things, but he'd never been called an amateur, and he didn't appreciate the suggestion that his more relaxed approach to acting was somehow unprofessional. "Amateur?" Dean's voice carried just enough edge to make the crew members nearby stop what they were doing and pay attention. "I've been entertaining people since before you were riding horses in B-Westerns, Duke. Just because I don't approach acting like it's military training doesn't make me an amateur." Howard Hawks, sensing that the tension between his two stars was about to boil over, quickly called for a 15-minute break. The crew dispersed, but everyone could feel the electricity in the air. This wasn't the usual creative disagreement between actors. This was a clash of two completely different philosophies about how to approach their craft. During the break, Wayne tried to smooth things over. He found Dean sitting alone in his trailer, smoking a cigarette and staring out at the California hills beyond the studio lot. "Dean, I didn't mean to call you an amateur," Wayne said, settling his large frame into a chair across from his co-star. "I just think we work better when everyone's on the same page." Dean looked at Wayne with those dark eyes that could convey so much emotion with so little effort. "Duke, You want to know something? I've been successful for 10 years doing things my way. I don't memorize every word because I believe that acting should feel spontaneous, real. When I change a line, it's because in that moment, those words feel more honest than what's written on the page. Wayne nodded, trying to understand. But Dean, we're making a movie here. There are dozens of people depending on us to be consistent, to be reliable. The script supervisor needs to know what you're going to say. The sound engineer needs to be ready for your cues. The other actors need to know when to deliver their lines. I get that, Dean replied. But you're asking me to be something I'm not. You want me to be John Wayne, and I'm Dean Martin. We're different people with different approaches to our work. Their conversation was interrupted by an assistant director knocking on the trailer door. Mr. Hawks wants everyone back on set for the next scene. The next scene was even more challenging than the previous one. It required Dean's character to break down emotionally as he admitted his failures and his desperate need for redemption. It was the kind of scene that required complete vulnerability, the very quality that had made Dean Martin a compelling performer, but also the quality that made him resist being locked into rigid line readings. They ran through the scene twice, with Dean delivering variations of his dialogue each time. His performance was emotionally honest and compelling, but it wasn't matching what was written in the script, and it was making Wayne increasingly frustrated. On the third take, Wayne stopped mid-scene. Howard, can we please get Dean to stick to what's written? I can't react properly if I don't know what he's going to say. Dean felt his face flush with embarrassment and anger. Being called out in front of the entire crew was humiliating, especially by someone who was essentially criticizing his entire approach to acting. You know what, Duke? Dean said, his voice rising loud enough for everyone on the soundstage to hear. Maybe you should find yourself a co-star who acts like a robot. Someone who can spit out lines exactly as written without any thought about whether they actually make sense or feel real. That's not what I'm asking for, Wayne shot back. I'm asking for basic professionalism. Professionalism. Dean's voice was now carrying that dangerous edge that people who knew him well recognized as a warning sign. I've been professional my entire career. I show up on time, I know my character, I give honest performances. But if being professional means turning myself into a talking script, then maybe this isn't the right project for me. With that, Dean Martin pulled off his cowboy hat, dropped it on the ground, and walked off the set. The soundstage fell completely silent. Cast and crew members looked around at each other in shock. Nobody walked off a John Wayne picture. Nobody walked away from Howard Hawks, and nobody, absolutely nobody, had ever seen Dean Martin lose his temper like that. Wayne stood in the middle of the set, watching Dean disappear through the soundstage doors, his face a mixture of anger and confusion. For a moment it looked like the Duke was going to storm after Dean and continue the argument in the parking lot. But then something unexpected happened. John Wayne did something that shocked everyone who thought they knew him. Instead of following Dean or writing him off as unprofessional, Wayne turned to Howard Hawks and said, "Give me 5 minutes." Then the Duke walked off the set himself. Wayne found Dean sitting in his car in the studio parking lot, the engine running, clearly preparing to drive away from the project entirely. Wayne approached the car cautiously, like a man approaching a wild animal that might bolt at any sudden movement. Dean rolled down his window when he saw Wayne approaching, but his expression was still angry and defensive. "Come to tell me I'm fired?" Dean asked. Wayne shook his head. "Actually, I came to apologize." Dean's expression changed from anger to surprise. In all the years he'd known John Wayne, he'd never heard the Duke apologize to anyone for anything. "You want to know something, Dean?" Wayne continued, leaning against the car door. "I've been watching you work for 3 weeks, and I've been so focused on the fact that you do things differently than me that I missed something important." "What's that?" "You're a better actor than I am." Dean stared at Wayne in complete shock. This wasn't what he'd expected to hear from the man who'd just called him unprofessional in front of an entire film crew. Wayne kept talking. "I memorize lines and hit marks, because that's what I need to do to get through a scene without embarrassing myself. But you actually understand these characters. When you change a line, it's not because you don't know the script. It's because you found something in that character that the writer didn't see." Dean turned off his car engine. "Duke, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything yet. Let me finish." Wayne's voice carried a humility that Dean had never heard before. "I've been making movies for 20 years, and I've gotten by on being reliable, showing up prepared, and giving audiences what they expect. But I've never been brave enough to find the truth in a character the way you do. I've been so worried about being professional that I forgot about being real." Dean got out of his car and looked at Wayne with new understanding. "You know, Duke, I've been so focused on being real that I sometimes forget about being professional. Maybe we both have something to learn from each other." Wayne nodded slowly. "Here's what I'm thinking. What if we go back in there and try a different approach? What if I stop worrying so much about every word being perfect, and you help me understand how to find the truth in a scene? And maybe you can help me understand when the crew needs consistency and when they need authenticity." Dean considered this for a moment. "You really think that could work?" "I think," Wayne said with a smile, "that it might make us both better at what we do." They walked back to the soundstage together, and when they entered, the entire crew was still standing exactly where they'd left them, as if frozen in time, waiting to see what would happen next. Howard Hawks looked at his two stars with cautious optimism. "Are we back in business, gentlemen?" Wayne looked at Dean, and Dean looked at Wayne. Then Dean picked up his cowboy hat from where he'd dropped it, dusted it off, and put it back on his head. "We're back in business," Dean said, "but we're going to do things a little differently." What happened next changed the way both men approached their craft for the rest of their careers. Wayne began allowing himself more emotional spontaneity in his performances, while Dean began paying closer attention to the technical aspects of filmmaking that helped create consistency for the crew. More importantly, they developed a working relationship, built on mutual respect for their different strengths. Wayne's methodical preparation provided a solid foundation, while Dean's instinctive understanding of character brought emotional depth that elevated every scene. The result was one of the greatest westerns ever made. Rio Bravos became a classic not just because of Howard Hawks' direction or the exciting plot, but because it featured two legendary actors who had learned to complement rather than compete with each other. Their famous saloon scene, where Dude proves his worth by outdrawing a professional gunslinger, was filmed in one take because Wayne and Dean had developed such a strong understanding of each other's rhythms and approaches. Wayne's steady, confident presence provided the perfect counterpoint to Dean's more vulnerable, emotionally complex performance. But the real magic of their partnership was evident in quieter moments, like the scene where Wayne's Sheriff Chance and Dean's Dude sit on the porch discussing honor, friendship, and the courage it takes to face your own failures. Wayne's dialogue was delivered exactly as written, providing a solid emotional foundation, while Dean's responses were improvised in the moment, creating a naturalness that made their friendship feel genuine and lived in. Years later, Wayne would tell interviewers that working with Dean Martin on Rio Bravos taught him that there's more than one way to be professional. "Dean showed me that sometimes being professional means being brave enough to find the truth in a scene, even if it means changing the words." Dean, for his part, never forgot the lesson Wayne taught him about the importance of consistency and preparation. In his later dramatic roles, Dean would spend more time with scripts and technical crew members, understanding how his spontaneous approach could work within the structured environment of professional filmmaking. Their confrontation on the Rio Bravos set became legendary in Hollywood, not because two stars had fought, but because two very different artists had found a way to respect and learn from each other's approaches. It proved that the best collaborative relationships aren't built on similarities, but on the willingness to see the value in different perspectives. The friendship that developed between Wayne and Dean during the making of Rio Bravos lasted for the rest of Wayne's life. They never made another movie together, but they remained close friends who understood something that many people in Hollywood never learn: that success comes not from making other people work like you, but from finding ways to bring out the best in each other's unique talents. Rio Bravo stands as a testament to what can happen when two professionals are willing to set aside their egos long enough to learn from each other. It's a reminder that the best art often comes from the tension between different approaches, and that sometimes the most important breakthroughs happen not when people agree, but when they're brave enough to disagree and then find a way forward together. If this story about finding common ground through professional respect moved you, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible behind-the-scenes stories from Hollywood's golden age. Have you ever had a professional conflict that turned into a valuable learning experience? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing tales of collaboration and mutual respect from the legends of entertainment.